Hello everybody, it is me, the one only demon kid here, and you might have, or actually you have read the title, because who doesn't read the title of the videos they're watching, and you're probably thinking like, demon kid, nobody asked for this, why are you doing this? And that's a good question, but my explanation is very simple. A while ago, I don't remember how long, but I don't really care either, a person posted on their story asking for tips on how to write dialogue, so I just texted them like every single tip that I have. I wanted to make a video, but I tried to do a video on how to make or how to give your LPS tattoos and I failed. So I was like, I need something else, and then I realized I have these DMs. I can use them as like a little script or an outline for what I'm about to do, the video I'm about to create, and then bada boom, I have a video. Okay, so advice number one, tip number one, I don't know how many tips I wrote in that DM, but I don't really care, is that you need a like large vocabulary, or like a huge vocabulary, many words in your little 𝖊𝖊𝖉𝖎𝖆, as it's called here. Swedish is very literal. So the reason you need a wide vocabulary with lots of words in it is because you're writing different people with different vocabularies stuck in their brain, and those different people will talk in different ways, and if you don't have a large vocabulary, that will limit your ability to write characters with different vocabularies. This is like low-key a dialogue life hack that I use that sounds like one of those clickbaity, I went from noob to pro in writing dialogue in just 1 month. Here is how I did it. But like, really, this is super helpful. Basically, all you're gonna do is use Google. You do it every day. But what you should use it for specifically is Googling synonyms. This is so useful. So let's say your characters want to say, oh, that's sad. The word that you probably have the most variety in is the word sad. So let me just look up like different words for the word sad or synonyms for the word sad. Okay, so I googled synonym for sad, and I found this website that said that 125 synonyms. So I'm gonna read some of these out loud for you just to see. We have the word depressed, heartbroken, what? I've never seen this word before, whatever. Mournful, pessimistic, somber, sorrowful, sorry, unhappy. Those were the strongest matches. And then we have strong matches like bereaved. I've never seen that word before. Like, English is my second language. Give me a break. We have the word blue, cheerless, dejected, despairing, despondent, disconsolate, distress, doleful, down, downcast, forlorn. What the fuck is forlorn, bro? Gloomy, glum, grief-stricken, grieved, heartsick, heavy-hearted, hurting, inconsolable, low-spirited, morose, pensive, fuck, English is weird. Okay, there were more matches than that, but you know, I'm too lazy to read them. But as you saw, those were a lot of words. A lot of those words I did not even know the meaning of. Now, part of that is because English is my second language, but it's also because they're not very commonly used, you know? There might be words in here that isn't in your vocabulary or your friend's vocabulary, and since your characters are supposed to be different from you or speak in a different manner, this is a extremely quick way to give your characters variety in their speech, because it will expose you to words that either you didn't know the meaning of or words you simply didn't think of in the first place. So you can just look through these, and trust me, if you do this, it will be so much easier to just increase your vocabulary. I'm not joking when I tell you guys that this is the reason I didn't fail English class. I did this so often that I just didn't fail, and it was amazing. So, and my English improved so fast after doing this, like you don't even understand. So this is an extremely useful tip. Like, even if you just want to know more about the English language or any language for that matter, this is an extremely helpful tip. But yeah, this is a great way to discover more ways that your character can say the same thing that you were about to say, if that makes sense. So instead of you writing dialogue for the character, it's like the character is speaking, because you found a word that you would never use normally. Okay, the second tip is to think about who your character is when you write. So let's say you're writing a sentence like, oh, that's sad. Let's say you're writing that sentence because I can't think of anything else. And let's say, like, maybe you did Google the synonym, or synonyms. Maybe you didn't. I don't know. But now you have to think while picking figuring out the words and exactly how you're going to phrase it. How does this character talk? Who is this character? One example is that if they're a stupid football player, then they will always say something like, oh, that's sad. Like that's how they would speak, right? But if you have a character who maybe is a writer, they should have a wider vocabulary because their hobby is centered in using different words and writing in different ways. And like, if they're a good writer, they shouldn't use the same word over and over again. There are exceptions to that, of course, but that's another discussion. So they might use a word like, that character might say something like oh, that's doleful or something. It depends. It depends on the character is what I'm trying to say. You also have to think about like how wide your character's vocabulary is. If you're writing a child character, chances are this child probably has a small vocabulary because they haven't existed for that long. Like, you wouldn't hear a 5-year-old say, oh, that's doleful, or oh, that's heavy-hearted, that's low-spirited, wistful. Like, that's not a child's vocabulary. So when you do this, when you write dialogue, you really need to think, who is my character? What's realistic for them to know in terms of the language you're speaking? And what are they likely to say based off their personality, age, maybe nationality as well? I included a very interesting example in my DM, so I'll just include it here because I thought it was interesting. It's about like how in Sweden it's rare for people to call people things like Miss, Sir, or Mr. We just don't do that. We just use their like first names. We rarely say like, oh, Mrs. Brown or something. Like, we don't do that here. It's just not a linguistic thing. So if I went to a foreign country, I probably wouldn't think of doing that, even though it might seem really rude to some people. But it's just like, here we use each other's names. That's just something we do. Like, even if they speak fluent English, it's not something we think of doing, like, ever, because it's not rude here to call someone by their name. So I thought that was an interesting example, but I'm probably the only one who cares. Subtext is everything, okay? Most people aren't really blunt, though some are a bit more blunt than others, but in general, people speak with subtext, right? If somebody is mad at somebody, they're probably not going to say, oh, I'm mad at you because you did this. No, it's more like, oh, I'm not mad at you, and then they leave, you know what I mean? Like, people speak in subtext most of the time. Like, people don't say what they mean. They say something else, but it means something different, if that makes sense. Like the mad example. So yeah, add subtext to your dialogue, because otherwise it might sound a bit like that's not how people talk most of the time, you know? Oh, listen, I'm an extra fucking bitch. Instead of just adding the background, I added a bunch of random items in the background to make it look prettier and to add a little bit of pop. However, sometimes less really is more. Here's how I apply that to dialogue, okay? A lot of the times, dialogue just has to get the job done. People focus on having kind of a punch to the dialogue. You know how some dialogue in scenes, movies and everything hit it really different, and you hear that line of dialogue and you're like, oh, damn, this is the most extreme, intense thing. And then all the editors make little edits with background music and include that piece of dialogue because it was just so intense and it had such a punch. Most dialogue is not supposed to do that because that kind of erases the whole point. If every single one of your lines had a punch, no dialogue line would have a punch. So you shouldn't focus or try super hard to make it sound so deep and special and punchy, because most of the time it just has to sound like something that can come out of a person's mouth when they speak. I know it's very tempting to write constant punchy dialogue, but the punch is not going to be there if it's constantly punchy. You're just gonna get hit in the face constantly and be like, ow, ow, ow. Like, it's too much. Your character usually has a goal or something in mind when they speak. For example, let's say I am having a conversation with my friend and they ask me, hey, do you want to eat something? I could respond with, yeah, I do want to eat something, but I could also say, let's go to that pizza place nearby, because I'm hungry and the pizza place is nearby. Even though that technically wasn't what the person asked, that's what I have in mind in that situation, and that is what I would say, because that's my ultimate goal, to go to the pizza place. Sometimes the goal might be a little bit complicated than that. A lot of the times people will not technically not directly answer the question. They will just like get straight to the point, if that makes sense. Don't write dialogue the way people talk. Like actually talk. The way people talk in real life is extremely messy, and it includes a lot of like unnecessary ums and hms and uhs. Try my best to cut those out in my videos, but you'll probably catch it at some points. It's also very common that people will talk about one thing, change the subject, then go back to the thing they were talking about before. And it's like, that's really messy, and it would be exhausting to read an actual real conversation. If I wanted to listen to a real conversation, I would watch a podcast. I barely watch podcasts, so that should tell you how uninterested I am in it. What's happening around the dialogue is also extremely important, because most of the time when people talk, they do something while they talk. Let's say your character is talking on the phone with another character, right? They're talking on the phone. Like when you sit on the phone, you don't actually sit while talking at the phone. No, you pace around. Maybe you move something, maybe you grab a glass of water. Like, people do things when they speak to each other. So like, even if you have decent dialogue, if the surrounding things happen around don't really make a lot of sense, then the dialogue or the scene might look overall bad, because nobody sits still while being on the phone. You just move around usually. Even if you have a conversation with somebody in person, you probably move around a little bit. Maybe somebody would chew on their pencil, maybe somebody would maybe you're outside, some people would take out the cigarette, just small things like that. People move, people do things, and like, I know that's harder to portray with LPS, but just because it's harder doesn't mean you shouldn't try. And I've seen plenty of people put in that extra effort, and it is so worth it, and it makes the scenes so much more interesting to watch, and it is still possible, I believe, so try it. Okay, so that was all the tips I had for this video. My camera battery is about to die, and I didn't have more tips in that DM, so if I have another tip that I forgot about, too bad. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you didn't, makes sense, nobody asked for it, but I hope you enjoy it nonetheless. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!